Bruchim Abam, welcome everyone to a special edition of All Parsha on Parshas Vayakhei Pekudei, the Haturim on Parshas Vayakhei. And I would like to share with you the comments of Haturim today. It's just a magnificent revelation of the Haturim, which will shed light on a very fundamental and important understanding of Shabbos in general. But let's begin with the following question. We know that the malachos that we refrain from on Shabbos are the lamed tes malachos. What are the lamed tes malachos? So these are the malachos needed in the functioning of the Mishkan. Actually, Rashi in Masechet Shabbos Mem Tes Amud Beis and Ayin Gimel says these were the malachos necessary in the construction of the Mishkan. The opinion of Rav Haigain is these were the malachos necessary in the regular functioning of the Mishkan. So we rest from those malachos that were needed to build the Mishkan. But don't we say Shabbos is Zecher Lamase Bereshis? Isn't Shabbos to commemorate the creation of the world? When we rest on Shabbos, aren't we emulating HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who created the world? Ki sheishes yamim asa Hashem es hashamayim b'yas haaretz v'vayom hashvi Shabbos v'yinofesh. The Lord created the world in 6 days, He rested on the seventh, and we emulate the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In fact, the Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, Goy sheshavas chayiv misa, a Gentile that rests on Shabbos is liable to the death penalty, because Shabbos is the scepter of the king. Shabbos is something that belongs to Hashem. There's only one person in the kingdom who's allowed to use the scepter of the king, and that is the child of the king. The Chidah says Shabbos demonstrates we are the children of Hashem. Only we could use His scepter. But that means the understanding of Shabbos is, just like Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on Shabbos, so we rest to commemorate Hashem's Shabbos. So Shabbos commemorates God resting from creating the world. So why are the activities that we're now allowed to do on Shabbos the activities needed to build the Mishkan? Mishkan man dachar shmei. What does the Mishkan have to do with anything? Why are the malachos that we rest from determined by what was needed in the construction of the Mishkan? Comes the Haturim. And the Haturim in the beginning of Vayakhei, Perek Lamed Hey Pasuk Aleph, la'asos. Twice we find in Tanakh the word la'asos. The word la'asos could be arranged Lamid Teisha, 39. It's also missing a Vav. Says the Haturim to teach that there are 39 malachas that we do during the 6 days, and we don't do them on Shabbos. Likewise, we find Asher bara Elokim la'asos. That is mentioned in Vayichulu. Now the Haturim says if you count from the beginning of Vayakhei until Loisavaru Eish B'chol Moshe Vaysecha Miyam HaShabbos, you have 39 words, also alluding to the 39 malachas of Shabbos. But now the Haturim says something which is out of this world. He says if you count up the verbs in Bereshis, namely Vayavdel, Vayomer, Vayasev, Vayivra, you have 39 verbs. This is a remez to the lamed tes malachos. Wait a second. Now the Haturim is revealing to us that Hashem created the world with 39 malachos? This is incredible. That means Ribono Shel Olam used 39 activities to create the world. Amazingly, if you look in the Yotzros of Parshas Shkalim, we find the following expression. Rebbe Lezer HaKalir, one of the great old-time Paitanim, says, Ozra Isa v'safarta v'hechanta v'chakarta umadadeta v'chalta. In other words, Ribono Shel Olam, then you saw, you counted, you investigated, you measured, you weighed, you estimated, you piled, you visited, you thought. What are all these expressions? What is the meaning of all of this? There's a certain Gemara in Masechta Brachos that always troubled me, and I think this Gemara will shed a lot of light upon our understanding of Shabbos in general. The Gemara says in Masechta Brachos Nun Hey Amud Aleph, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Yoidea Haya Betzalel Letzaref Oisiyos Shenivru Bahen Shamayim V'Aretz. Betzalel knew how to combine the letters with which the Almighty created heaven and earth. So I look at this Gemara and I think to myself, good for Betzalel. Why do I need to know that Betzalel knew how to do that? My third cousin, he could recite the telephone book backwards standing on his head. But, you don't need to know that. And why do I need to know that Bezalel knew how to combine the letters with which Hashem created heaven and earth? It must be, the Gemara is saying, that for Bezalel to construct the Mishkan, he needed to know how the Rebbeinu Shalom created heaven and earth. But Bezalel is not making heaven and earth, he's making a Mishkan. Why would Bezalel need to know the letters with which the Rebbeinu Shalom created heaven and earth? Comes Rabbi Yisrael Mishkalav in his Hakdama to the Sefer Pas HaShulchan. He's one of the primary disciples of the Vilna Gaon. And he says that the Vilna Gaon said that the 39 descriptive words used by Rebbe Elazar HaKalir in the Yoitzros for Parshas Shkalim are the 39 activities with which the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world. Hashem created the world with Lamed Tes Malachos, and they are described in the 39 expressions found in the Yoitzros to Parshas Shkalim. Comes the Sefer Ion Tefillah, Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg, and he reveals to us something incredible. Based on these comments of Rabbi Yisrael Mishkalav, if God created the world with 39 malachos, so really on Shabbos, we are emulating the Creator, who did 39 activities to create the world, and he rested from them, so we should rest from those activities with which the Almighty created the world. The only thing is, who could possibly fathom the activities with which Rebbeinu Shalom created the world? Me, Yavoi B'Soid Hashem, who could enter the secrets of God? However, the Mishkan is a microcosm of the universe. The Mishkan is literally a miniature universe. How do we know that? We learn that from the fact, and that's seen, I believe, in the Gemara that says Bezalel knew how to combine the letters with which Hashem created heaven and earth. Bezalel needed to know how Hashem created heaven and earth, otherwise he could not create an Olam Katan, a small world, namely the Mishkan. Therefore, since it would be impossible for a human being, a Basar V'Dam, to know what are the activities Hashem used to create the world, let's see what activities are needed to create the Olam Katan, the Mishkan, and from there we could glean which activities were necessary for the Rebbeinu Shalom to create the world, and by resting from the activities that were needed to create the Mishkan, we're in essence emulating the Creator who rested from the activities he used to create the world. Now, what the Baal Haturim is doing for us is he's saying that in fact, if you look at the Psukim in Bereshis carefully, you will notice and you will see that there are 39 verbs used to describe how Hashem created the world. La'asois, tes, la'asois, lamid, tesha, 39. And the 39 verbs are found, briyos, malachos, havayos, hoitzos, havdalos, they add up to 39. So this is really a transformative understanding of the Mishkan being a microcosm of the universe, and the activities Bezalel used to make the Mishkan is the insight with which we can understand the activities Hashem used to create the world. And that's why Bezalel hoya yodea l'tzaref ha'osya shenivru shamayim ba'aretz. This gives us insight into a number of comments of Chazal. The Gemara in Megillah says on Yud Amud Beis that it says upon the construction of the Mishkan, Vayakhei b'yom hashmini, that day was a simcha before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like the day that heaven and earth were created. What's the connection between the building of the Mishkan and heaven and earth? But now we see that the Mishkan was a microcosm of the universe, and therefore the simcha that Hashem experienced, so to speak, Vayakhei, when the Mishkan was created, was similar to the simcha that he felt by creating heaven and earth. Furthermore, the Medrash Rabbah says in Nosai, Parsha Yud Beis, Ois Yud Aleph, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says in the name of the Rashbi, when the Mishkan was constructed, it didn't say Lehakim ha-Mishkan, but Lehakim es ha-Mishkan. That along with the Mishkan, something else was stabilized, namely the entire world. Through the erection of the Mishkan, the entire world was stabilized. So the Mishkan is not only a microcosm of the world, but literally gives stability to the entire world. Furthermore, if you look at Medrash Tanchuma, Parshas Pekudei, and it's also a Medrash Rabbah and Parshas Nosai, that every component of the Mishkan corresponds to a different element of the world. So the heaven and earth corresponds to the curtains of the Mishkan, because the Shamayim was stretched out like a Uriah. It says on the second day, Havdalah, Vihi Mavdil Bein Mayim Lamayim. And in the Mishkan, Vihivdila HaParoichas. The gathering of the water on the third day, the gathering of the water in the Kiyar. Every element of this universe is reflected and represented in the Mishkan. The Mishkan is literally a microcosm of the universe. With this understanding of the Mishkan, and the Mishkan giving us insight into the malachos needed with which Hashem created the world, the Imrei Emes says this would answer something that has plagued many. The Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Ayin says, and comments on the pasuk in Parshas Vayakhei, that the only malacha of the 39 malachos that is enunciated explicitly in the Torah is Lo sevaru eish b'chol ma'ishveisecha miyam haShabbos. Do not light a fire in all of your dwelling places on Shabbos. And there's a machlokes Tanoim. Rabbi Yossi says that this is the only malacha explicitly mentioned, havara lelav yatzis. That while all the other lavim are chiyuvei misa, one is chayiv kares for violating Shabbos, and with witnesses, one is chayiv skila for making a fire on Shabbos, it's only a lav. Reb Nosson says no, havara lechalik yatzis. The reason by one particular malacha was specified is to teach that in order to be chayiv on Shabbos, you don't have to do all 39 malachos in one halama and one forgetting. As long as you do one malacha, that's enough to be mechayiv you. Ask the Imrei Emes, why does the Torah choose Havara? Of all the Lamites Malachos, why specifically Havara was used as an illustration that you only have to violate one to be Chayiv on Shabbos? Says the Imrei Emes, based on our understanding, that what are you now to do on Shabbos? We cannot do on Shabbos those activities with which Hashem created the world. Now, of all the malachas of Shabbos, there's one particular malacha that Hashem did not use to create the world, namely Havara. Why? As the Gemara says in Masechta Psachim, that the first fire came into being when Adam Arishon rubbed two stones together Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos. So in fact, Havara was not extant in the creating of the world. Havara only existed Motzei Shabbos. So you would have thought that you're allowed to make a fire on Shabbos, because the malachos you're now allowed to do on Shabbos are those malachos that the Rebbeinu Shalom used to create the world. But the Rebbeinu Shalom did not use fire to create the world. Fire did not exist until Motzei Shabbos. And therefore the Torah specifies to indicate that even though all the other malachos are those malachos with which Hashem used to create the world, fire is still aser. I would add, humbly, that why, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, is Havara the most lenient of all the lavin? Why is it only a lav and not a kares? And the answer would seem quite clear. All the other lavin, in fact, we cannot do because the Rebbeinu Shalom used to create the world, but the Rebbeinu Shalom did not use fire to create the world. And therefore it's much more lenient than the other malachos. But this understanding that what we're now to do on Shabbos is not the malachos that were used in building the Mishkan. The malachos used in building the Mishkan only gives us an insight into those malachos that the Rebbeinu Shalom used to create the world. This is all brought out by the amazing discovery of the Haturim, that if you look in Sefer Bereshis, in Parshas Bereshis, in the creation of the world, 39 verbs are used describing the creation of the world, as the Gra points out that in the period of the Yotzros for Shabbos, Parshas Shkolim, 39 verbs are used. And we need a personality like the Haturim to go through with a fine comb through the Psukim and Bereshis and to bring to the light of day this beautiful gem that there are 39 verbs used in Bereshis corresponding to the 39 activities with which Rebbeinu Shalom used to create the world. And therefore we, by observing the Shabbos, are emulating the Creator. We become a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Masa Bereshis, and with a partner like the Rebbeinu Shalom, it is no wonder that Shabbos is the makar of all brachos. And in the zechus of our learning about Shabbos and our observing of Shabbos, Rebbeinu Shalom should mevarich all of us shefa, bracha, v'hatzlacha, a wonderful Shabbos, Parshas Vayakhei, Pekudei, up ahead, Shabbos HaChodesh, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Haba, Aleinu, L'Toiva, a Guten Shabbos.